and welcome to Story Dev. My name is Luke, also known as Tienery, and we are going to be continuing with the Story Creator series. And in this video, we're going to be potentially looking at actually making the actual game engine and starting with that in this video, because we have pretty much completed most of this stuff right here. We have done the characters, the objects, the places. I mean, we haven't quite completed objects or items yet, but that's because that ties in with the meditation system. We've completed quests. We've somewhat completed timelines. Again, with timelines, we've got, so if we go over to our timelines form, can we stop that, please? Don't know why it automatically unsaves for some reason. But anyway, if we go over to here, we've got, things like new conversation, new events, new discovery. And I mentioned about events and conversations. Basically, we migrate some of the code from the original story dev over into here. I'll probably do that off recording because it's kind of a tedious process and trying to get it to actually function properly in the context of this software. So I'll do that off recording so that you've got something a little bit more interesting to see. But in this video, we're going to actually have a look at the meditation system and how that's going to work in the context of the database. So we've got this meditations option here, but we haven't actually got a form to actually manage these meditations. But we don't really know how the meditation system is going to work, so we kind of need to make the meditation system. I'm going to prototype it and see how it goes. So in order to do that, what I typically do, because this game is going to be written in Haxe and Car, what I'm going to be using is a thing called Code Studio. Normally it comes up with the actual executable, but for some reason I'm only getting the folder, so I'm just going to hit enter on that one. Scroll down and click this. Let's get rid of that folder now. Don't need that anymore. Thank you. Right. This is clearly something else that I was working on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a folder. We've got projects here. Interesting. What I'm going to do, let's see. Shall I go to? Let's go to here. Let's see. I'm going to go. No. Got a projects folder here actually. So I've got Haxe. That's probably something I was working with RPG Maker with at some time, but decided not to go ahead with that. So in this case, what I'm going to be making is, let's see. So this is the actual This is the actual engine. So I'm going to basically make the game as if it were the engine, and then probably copy the engine out of the game and put it into its own separate project later on. So I'm going to call this Shadowlight for now, and we'll work on getting all of the code that we will be working on in here later. So what I'm going to do, once I've got this up, just the actual Code Studio that is, we're going to Control-Shift-P, init car project. Now, I've got a library that I use myself, which I have built. If I go to Opera, let's see, and I shall bring it up so that you can see it. Let's go take that over here so that you can see what I'm doing. We go to GitHub. And we go to TwinSpire Core. This is the thing I will be using primarily, and this is the library that I've built myself. TwinSpire is a 2D rendering and application framework using the innovative Haxe programming language built on top of the low-level library Car. So, allegedly, we would have TwinSpire Core, which is this library here, and then we've got a game engine, a GUI, and a web. Where is that? Right. Where is it? Is nowhere. But much of what I'm saying here is kind of obsolete in a way. I should probably get rid of this stuff because it doesn't. I did try Odin, and I really do like the idea of using a low-level language that allows me to use DRM GUI and Raylib at the same time. There's a few problems with Raylib. The biggest one for me is the fact that font atlasing isn't done very well in Raylib, so that kind of needs to be fixed. But aside from that, it's actually a very, very simple library and it's easy to pick up and use. Raylib does some internal stuff which uses Sean Barrett's TTF single header file. For those of you in the programming community know, potentially. Raylib and DRM GUI use the same thing. So they both use Sean Barrett's TTF library. The weird thing is for some reason, and I don't know why, it must be something to do with the way in which Raylib uses Sean Barrett's TTF and putting that into its pipeline versus DRM GUI's, but in DRM GUI it's actually fine, whereas if you try to use it directly with Raylib, it doesn't work. And I don't know why. I think it's probably something to do with the implementation of the TTF single header file. So something there needs to be done in order to make it look better, because the font aliasing actually works perfectly fine in DRM GUI but not in Raylib, which is a bit odd. But anyway, bit of a sidetrack there, but regardless, this is the library I'm going to be using. We're going to be using the HAX programming language, which is very similar to C#, with some differences, of course, as well. So this is kind of the language that you will be looking at for the game engine at least, and then for the editor we're going to be using C# with WinForms. So I've already got this installed. So what I'm going to do is in here I've got this. I'm going to rename this project to Shadowlight, and I'm going to create, or not create, sorry, I'm going to add a library called TwinSpire. That's the TwinSpire library that refers to this here. And then what I'm going to do is inside of main.hx, I'm going to do some cleanup. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of, I'm just going to clean this little bit up here. I prefer my things be on a new line. My things. I'm going to import TwinSpire application. Now to begin with, this is something to do with Code Studio or Visual Studio Code in general, is doesn't automatically pick up the TwinSpire application, and that's because a full refresh is required in order for that to work. I am going to get rid of this bit because that is not needed. I am also going to do system.notify on frames, and here I'm going to put in our render function, followed by Shadowlight, the actual name of the game that we're going to be using. I'm going to adjust the width and height as well. So I'm on a 4K screen, so I'd like to see it slightly bigger. Let's say 1600 by 900. Let's see. There's another thing that TwinSpire allows us to do, and that is no asset loading. So basically what this means is when we create the application, we are going to make sure that no assets are loaded by default. And normally, typically, if we were to say comment this out, then what would happen is it will automatically load all of the assets that have been exported via the CAR pipeline and load it all entirely. Any music, any sound effects, any graphics, any fonts, everything. And that could take quite a long time to load, especially if those files are very large. So in order to avoid loading things unnecessarily, we delete this and we allow this to basically loads the application without, not create the application without loading any assets. And we'll talk more about that a bit later. In here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say var app is equal to application.instance, because we need that, I believe, potentially. Do we need that? We'll see. I can't remember now. It's been a while since I used it. I do know my own library. I'm pretty sure I do. Now, polling is done in the background, so we don't need to do any polling. But in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say g2.begin true color.black. We're just going to have a black background color. And finally, I need to actually import that color. I'm going to get rid of the things I don't need, that and that. And then we're pretty much ready to go. If we were to run this now, this will build correctly. As you can see, we load and we have something running, although nothing's happening, as you can see. What I'm going to do now is to make sure that Code Studio actually does what it needs to do. Will this actually work? There we go. I'm going to do a full refresh of Code Studio, and suddenly now this works. So it knows where it is now, and HAX is properly picking up, kind of like the IntelliSense way of doing things like Visual Studio does. So, next thing I'm going to do is we have assets here. So I'm going to go and create a class called game. And inside of TwinSpire, what we have is, okay, maybe I should explain this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do what's called a macro call, which is using this @build metadata. So in HAX, you've got metadata, similar to the way in which attributes work in C#. And basically what we're doing here is we're going to say, I want to build this class using a macro function. And in this case, we're going to go to twinspire.macros.staticbuilder.build. This is a macro function, and this will generate code or modify existing code within this class at compile time. So it's basically it's basically metaprogramming. So in this instance, what I'm going to do is there's two different custom functions or custom attributes or metadata, whatever you want to call it, that I'm going to add to functions. And you can do it to variables as well. And in here, I'm going to say function init and a function render. We don't need to do any update loops because that's already being done by TwinSpire in the background. I'm going to import graphics from graphics 2, that is. So make sure to import that. Finally, I am going to import something else. Actually, okay. So we've got another metadata called local, and in this case, I'm going to just put in last time, just for the time being. No pun intended. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to import. System. Right. Last time is equal to system.time. So basically we want delta time that we can use. So I'm going to have a delta time here as well. So I'm going to say that is a float. So I'm going to say delta time is equal to last time minus system.time, and then last time equal to system.time. Now, in order for the events to work properly, we need to actually initialize it. So twinspar.events, oh, actually already, yeah, it's at the global level. So what I'm going to do is inside of the init function, I'm going to say global events.init. This will initialize everything. And then in here, I'm going to say, right at the very bottom, that is, global events.end. This will make sure that any values that are adjusted within the global events call, or class, sorry, is zeroed out, so to speak, at the end of each frame, so that things don't sort of carry on. So that's what we're going to do, and then we can actually start rendering something. But before we do that, I need to do something in here. So I was talking about asset loading. So there's a thing called resource management. I don't have any fonts to show just yet, so maybe we'll get to it in this video. I'm not sure. I don't want this video to go on for too long. That's the issue. How long have we gone for so far? 16 minutes. That's fine. All right. So I'm just going to do a quick thing here. So we've got this thing called resources, and we can basically load stuff in, right? So let's imagine we do have some fonts. In fact, I might as well just do it now anyway, just get it done out of the way. Now normally what I tend to do is, with this load fonts call, what it's going to do is it's going to work out what names car recognizes each of the fonts as. And it's going to iterate across all of those names, and it's going to work out what we want to load in. So if I were to say add fonts into the car pipeline that all start with the name font underscore, then what I can instead do is say font underscore star. And the star basically means find anything that begins with font underscore and load in. Alternatively, what I could do is I could have a asterisk underscore font. So let's say I instead suffix all of my font files with underscore font. It would do the exact same thing, but I'm going to do it at the front rather than the back because that makes more sense to me. So I can do that, and the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to say resources.submit load request. I would do async, but I'm not going to because it's this is the same thing with it's a callback. It's already asynchronous to an extent. The difference being is the async function actually does specifically use a what's it called? Promise handlers in JavaScript context, or in any other context it will attempt to use a thread, which hasn't actually been implemented yet. Which actually hasn't been implemented yet. So don't bother with the async function just yet because it isn't actually properly working. So once we've done that, we can bring that in, and inside of here I'm going to say game.init. As you can see, despite the fact that I haven't specifically said public static, it's given me the option to use this. So what is this doing? So when we use static builder, it's actually telling this class to build each of our variables and functions as static all the time. Where we've got local, we're saying this is a private static, and everything under global is a public static. And we can mix the lot together, and that just makes it a lot easier to work out what functions we can use. We can organize this file a bit later once it grows a bit larger, etc. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say game.render g2. So I'll pass that in, and then if we build it, we will get the same result because we haven't actually we're not actually rendering anything yet. Okay, so what do we do next? Well, we haven't actually included any fonts, so it didn't technically load anything. So it thought it was going to load something, but because it couldn't find any fonts with that, then it's just going to load without loading any fonts. So I'll work out what fonts I will use at some point in the future, but just to basically demonstrate, we can use this to load fonts in and use it. Okay. Now, how I typically do programming outside of C#, at least in the context of hacks, what I like to do, and this is going to shock some programmers right down to the core, because although I don't mind working with C# in the object-oriented manner of WinForms, I actually don't like working with object-oriented style programming, generally speaking. The only reason I do it in WinForms is because it was one of the first things I learned when I was first getting into programming, and to this day I can't put it down. There's something about WinForms that I just really enjoy. I guess it's just because of the fact that you can just drag and drop things into a form, and you link it all up to your data, do what you need to do with it, and then you're basically done. And that's what I like about WinForms. And obviously, with the 16 years of experience that I've had with WinForms and C#, it's hard to get away from that habit, as you can imagine. But generally speaking, outside of C#, I prefer to go down the route of procedural programming, which means going a bit more data oriented, which is what I prefer to do. So in this instance, and this is why I've got everything static, is I'm going to have just this one file, class game. Aside from all of the data that's going to exist, all of the business logic and all of the rendering is going to be done in this file that you see here on the screen. That might sound crazy to you, but that's how I program. Let's zoom in, if I can even zoom in. How do you zoom in Visual Studio Code? Normally you can just control scroll, but it doesn't seem you can do that. Where is it? Zoom in. Zoom. Where are you? Am I going mad? Zoom. I want to zoom. Am I allowed to zoom? Ah, there we go. Control plus control. Ah, right. No. Wait, what? Control. Oh, right, okay. Control equals. I'm like, what? Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Never mind. Never mind. We'll do that. I think that just zooms the entire editor, doesn't it? I think I just. To be honest, I think I just want to modify the font size in here. We'll go with that. 22. I'll do. Just so that you can see it a bit better. Okay. That looks good to me. Alright. So, let's work on the meditation system. How is this going to work? Well, so there's the concept of crystals. So we need some kind of crystal in place, or a series of crystals. But there's also going to be sort of the concept of emotions and stuff like that. So, so this is how I'm thinking of doing it. We're going to have a grid. So meditation system. I'm going to call this meditation system. And I'm going to do local. So it cannot be called outside of this game class. Now I'm going to say render meditation. Now, how are we going to do this? So I'm going to call render meditation in here. Actually, you know what? The first thing I'm going to do is up here, we've got what's called a back buffer, which you can get from the application class. So I'm going to go into here to inspire the application. Actually, I probably will need the animate at some point. Also application, so I'll bring in application. So we're going to go in here and I'm going to say application dot create back buffer. And this is going to allow us to create a back buffer at a specific width and height. I'm going to set this at the current screen's width and height, just when it is loading. So what I'm then going to do is something curious, whatever that means. So we're going to have a buffer, which is going to be an image, and we need to import that car.image. And down here, I'm going to say buffer is equal to application.get buffer context. And we will render to that buffer, right? So once we've rendered everything down here, render buffer, I'm going to say g2.color is equal to color to white, and then I'm going to say, in fact, this doesn't work when you do this, so I need to get rid of that, bring that into this context. So basically, if you try to have two different graphics contexts that are doing a begin end. So if you have a begin end in this context and then a begin and end within this context, that won't work. It's something internally in car that won't let that happen. So anyway, we're going to then draw scaled image, which is going to be our buffer at the destination 00 system.window width system.window height. But basically what that means is regardless of the size of the window, our buffer is going to stretch. It's a very simple and cheap way of getting any rendered result onto the screen that's rendered at a specific resolution all the time, regardless of the window width. Now, obviously, you can do quite a lot of things with that, but for the time being, I'm not going to go crazy with it, so we're just going to leave it at that for now. Inside of our render meditation, what I'm going to do, so we've got the image, which is the buffer, and we can assign bf buffer.g2, which is what we want, but the only what's going on? I'm going mad. Mad. The only reason I wanted this is because I wanted to assign it here. Now, maybe I refer to this later, but actually, to be honest, I kind of need the actual buffer graphics. So instead what I could do is just get graphics 2D from the current back buffer, which is what I'm going to do. Now, it's going to be a grid system, so let's try that. So we're going to have, say, var meditation grid. I'm going to make this an array. Type int, and I'm also going to say meditation grids, meditation underscore grids, x, so the number across and the number down. I'm going to do that. Let's just go into in it. At this point, we're just testing and making sure it just works. So in here, I'm just going to say meditation grid x is equal to, let's say, 8. Y is equal to 5. And meditation grid is just going to be 4 I in 0 dot dot dot, and then in here I'm going to say meditation grid x times meditation grid y, and I'm just going to put a 0 in there. So you're probably wondering what the hell this is doing and why it's even legal. I can actually just discard that because I'm not using it. So what's happening here? So basically, Hex is an expressive language similar to JavaScript in that you can do an expression like this and it will actually just generate zeros within this array, however many times that is. That's 40, right? 40 times. So it will generate 40 zeros within meditation grid. And so what I'm going to do down here, say 4, I'm going to go the y-axis first. So y 0 dot 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 meditation grid y for x in 0 dot 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 meditation grid x. Actually, no, I'm not. What am I doing? What am I doing? For index in meditation grid. Don't ask why I was thinking that. So what I now need to do is actually determine, based on what we're looking at. So what are we looking at, right? So when we iterate through the index, what is our x and y position within this grid? Unless I do want what I had before. Kind of, yeah. Maybe I do want what I had before. Ignore me. Ignore me. So we've got our index, meditation grid, and then we're getting something. Right. So in here, what I'm going to do is say, let's see, x plus meditation grid x times y, I believe. That's right, isn't it? Potentially. Is that right? Am I doing this calculation correctly? I think I am. Because the multiplication is going to be done first. So if y is, yeah, yeah, that looks right. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is just check to see what the index is. If it's 0, then it's empty, I guess. It's an empty cell. I think let's just test something. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a massive border, which is going to represent the actual size of the grid. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say var meditation cell size, which is an int. In fact, I'm going to make that inline, and that's going to be, let's say, 48 pixels. And we can say, okay, grid width is equal to this times meditation cell size, grid height, meditation grid y, meditation cell size. We also want to put it in the middle of the screen. So what I'm going to do, say grid x is equal to buffer dot real width minus grid width divided by 2, and the same the other one. Like that. And finally we're going to draw the grid. So we'll say G2, and we need to make sure we begin. So if we go buffer.g2.begin, we'll do the exact same thing that we were done before. Oh, we're not actually importing color, are we? Well, it's got problems. There we go. There we go. We'll go in here, and then finally down here I'm going to say g2.color color.white, and let's draw a rectangle. We are going to draw a rect. We are going to draw a rect. Dun 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 dun. Grid width, grid height, and we're going to make that 3 pixels thick. Yeah. What am I doing? I don't know. Don't ask. Seriously, don't bother asking. Let's see that. What are the results? What are the results? We've got something in the middle of the screen. Excellent. We've got a rectangle. It's got to be the best game in the world. Having a look at a rectangle. It's got to be frickin' awesome. That is an impressive game. Really enjoying this. I'm pathetic. I am pathetic. Alright. Alright, okay. I'm fired. My game's crap. Ah, but wait. I've got something else for you. So I'm not quite fired just yet. Let's see. What are we going to do with index 0? I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'll tell you what. If x is greater than 0 and y is greater than 0, and x is less than meditation grid x, and y is less than meditation grid y, then we are going to draw a rectangle at that position, which is going to be of color grey. It is going to be grey. It is going to be grey. No. I'm going to do actual X. And in here, what we're going to do is we want the X position multiplied by our meditation grid X plus grid X. Actual Y is also going to be Y times meditation grid. Oops. Grid Y plus grid Y. Okay. So in here, I am just going to draw a rectangle. We need to set a color, obviously. We're going to say color dot from float. So I'm just going to say 0.6 or something. That'll do. And in here, I'm going to say actual X, actual Y, meditation cell size, meditation cell size. Let's make that 2. Let's make that 2. Maybe. Maybe. Let's have a look at that. Oh. Ooh, okay, interesting. That doesn't make any sense. What are we doing? Oh. Oh. That's supposed to be meditation cell size. Meditation cell size. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. That makes more sense. There we go. Sort of. So what we don't want, you can see where I'm trying to go with this. So what we don't want is for this, for the grey colour to overlap the white, because the white basically indicates effectively a wall that you can't go out of. So we kind of want to get rid of that. I think the reason why is because this is exclusive, and we're trying to do the same here, I think. All right. So I need to do -1, -1, and then we will get the result that we actually want. Yeah, there we go. And I think I want that color maybe a bit darker. 0.4 maybe. Maybe let's go 1.5 on the thickness as well. um, let's make it 64 by 64. Because that seems a little small, to be honest. Actually does seem a bit small. Hmm. Hmm. What do you think? I think that's alright. Okay, maybe 96? Or is that too big? Oh no, that's alright. That's all right. No, that's good. Okay. So next thing I want to do is complete the grid system so it doesn't look like this. So next thing we're going to do is say else if x is equal to 0. So we're going to do the x's first. So if x is equal to 0, or x is equal to meditation grid x minus 1, and in fact, no, what am I doing? We're going to do an else here. I go like this. So if x is equal to 0, or x is equal to da, 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 da. So what I'm going to do here is basically say if x is those positions. So if we're looking at basically the left or right hand side of the grid, then we're drawing lines on the from like each side, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes some sense. So line x, line y, line end x, line and y. And what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to say line x is equal to x times meditation cell size. So it's okay. So it's basically the same as actual x. What I'm going to do, I'm going to say line y. Oh, and also we're going to make sure that in this instance we're covering ourselves with regards to this. Because what we're only drawing the lines on the outside of the grid, right? That's going to be actual y. Yeah. And then we're going to have a line end x. So our end x is going to be equal to actual x plus our cell size line and y is still just actual y. And then we'll do the same again. 0 0.0, 0 0.0, 0 0.0, 0 0.0. Type inference. Gotta be careful about that. Gotta be careful about that. Okay, and we're going to do the same for the y-axis. Theory, this should work. In theory. I say in theory, as if I know what I'm doing. We'll see. We'll see. So in this case, I'm going to get rid of this, and we are going to do this. Right. And we've still got a color there, so I'm just going to do g2.drawLine line X, line, oops, line Y, line and X, line and Y. 1.5. Let's have a look. Sort of. So, now that's interesting. It's skipping that. Yeah, skipping the last two on each side, which is a little odd. Okay, why is that? Oh, maybe we need to get rid of this. Maybe we need to get rid of that. Maybe we need to get rid of that. Oh. I got rid of it all. I've gotten rid of it. Didn't mean that. Oh my god. So that was right. Oh no, it's this check. Ugh. It's this check. That's what I was doing wrong. I was looking at the wrong thing. Almost. What's going on there? It's doing that, but it's not doing that. What? I'm confused now. I'm confused. That is very bizarre. I'm gonna have to check that. Have a look over it at some other point. But we are getting close to an hour now. So I'm going to end this recording. And hopefully you sort of know what we're trying to do here. We've got a grid on the screen, which is exciting, although we can't really do anything at the moment. So I'm going to leave it here for now, because it's getting on to almost an hour. So thank you very much for watching. In the next video, we'll have fonts. I'll have that thing fixed, hopefully, after I've worked out what's gone wrong. And we'll actually continue with implementing the meditation game mechanics. So, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.